Let's go to Tim in Philly. Hi, Tim. What are you doing?
How you doing, gentlemen? It's been a while.
Indeed. What's up?
Not much. First and foremost, congratulations on you guys making the Super Bowl.
Well,
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Anytime. Fun time. But yeah, last time we talked, I was giving my feedback on what I saw from Brock Purdy. Now that, you guys have been on national television, I've been able to watch him a little bit more in bigger games and wanted to provide my input.
Would love to hear it, Tim.
All right. So we were on different spectrums last time. I told you I didn't see what you guys saw in Brock Purdy. I see why you guys like him. He's a good football player. I'm just not ready to tell you guys that he's an upper echelon quarterback in this league. Sometimes I feel like the San Francisco fan base believes he's the second coming of Jesus. I'm not ready to go there. But he's a good quarterback, and what's really important is that the 49ers around him believe in him. And I think that's really geared you guys to make those past comebacks, both against the Packers and the Niners.
I'll also say this, Tim, and I don't know how long you've really been dialed in to trying to check out Brock Purdy, and I do remember our conversations from a few weeks ago about it. But here's what I'll say. If you just tuned in for the playoffs, you actually have not seen the best of Brock Purdy. I'm willing to admit that. He has not played great. And part of the time, that's obvious. First half against Green Bay, for example. But even what we watched in the second half of the game against the Lions, I thought it was good. And his ability to run when everything broke down obviously won the game. But while that's wonderful and talented, it's also not what the 49ers are setting out to do. They're not setting out to drop back and have him run around and create things with his legs. So the 49er offense that you've seen the last couple of weeks, Tim, you can say whatever you want about it. It has not been at its best. There's no question.
I agree. I think about this every time I probably watch them play. I'm very jealous that you guys get to sit down every Sunday and watch Christian McCaffrey play for your football team.
It's pretty fun.
Very jealous.
Yeah, it's pretty fun, Tim.
He's a good player.
Yeah.
He's a good player, but here's the other thing. And Tim, thanks so much for calling back. I mean, no one wants to hear this because it's just not a good sports media take. But the whole thing works together. And this is why I do get bothered by whether it's what's his name?
Ryan Clark?
Ryan Clark. Oh, he doesn't elevate the people around him. And then here's Cam Newton. Well, he's not even a top 10 player on his own team. Here's something we could get into. Are you all under the impression that Christian McCaffrey looks like that no matter who his quarterback is? Because that's crazy. You all are nuts if you think that part of why McCaffrey looks the way he does is because of Brock Purdy. That goes both ways. It absolutely goes both ways. It's just like Kyle Shanahan calling a play. Well, he's got Kyle Shanahan calling a play. Right, and Kyle has Brock Purdy running the play. These things work in concert together. And if a defense cannot zero in on one part of your offense, that makes everything around you stronger. It makes the defense weaker. It makes you more effective. The 49ers have outgained their opponents yard for yard more than any other team in football. I don't know why we're so hell-bent on figuring out who's the one person who's responsible for that. There are a bunch of people responsible for that. And I'm telling you that the holes that are open for McCaffrey and the receiving yards that he has and all of these things, a lot of that has to do with the production that they get from the guy who starts with the ball.
Right, and the production they get from the five guys who block and the scheme that's designed and the fakes that are being made by other players. The whole thing works in concert more than in any other sport. In baseball, you have a good hitter, and it doesn't matter what the other 8 guys in the lineup have done, for the most part, in terms of what that guy is going to do in his at-bat. If you're good enough and you can beat the pitcher and you can hit the ball hard, you're going to be productive. Even if the guy in front of you isn't great, you're still going to be a productive hitter if you're a good hitter. In basketball, as an individual, you can take the game over, and yeah, your teammates matter, but they matter less than they do in the NFL. If you don't have a good offensive line, it doesn't matter how good your quarterback is and how good your skill guys are, you're going to struggle. So it all goes from the scheme to the O-line to the quarterback to the skill guys. It's all interrelated. And if Cam Newton wants to look at any number, look at what Christian McCaffrey did when you were quarterback, Cam. When McCaffrey played 16 games with you, his numbers were paltry. So if anybody didn't make the people around him better, it was you, Cam.
Yeah. Why? Because the defense could key on Christian McCaffrey because Christian had an inaccurate quarterback when he played with Cam Newton. Now he has an accurate quarterback.
Right.
And those 10 percentage points in terms of completion matter. They really do. So the whole thing works together, and this is one of the fundamental pieces of the point I've been trying to make about Brock Purdy since last year. I think it's crazy talk to believe that in the NFL, an offense can function at a high level and win a lot of games with mediocrity at quarterback. That's absurd. It does not exist. Even if you want to give me your traditional examples of Brad Johnson and Trent Dilfer.
Yeah.
Right. Those weren't high-functioning offenses.
No.
They were mediocre offenses paired with absolutely epic defenses. They knew don't turn the ball over and we're going to have a really good shot to win. But go look at all of the stats and tell me when Dilfer erased a 24-7 deficit. Didn't happen. Didn't exist. I don't think his defense ever gave up 24, period, let alone in a half.
Right.
Okay? So that to me is fundamental to the entire conversation. You do not get a high-functioning offense and a team that appears in the Super Bowl with mediocrity at quarterback. Now, Tim calls up and says it feels like a lot of 49er fans want to make this guy the second coming or
right.
And I hear that. Maybe there is some of that. I don't believe that. I don't think he is Patrick Mahomes. I don't think he's ever going to be Patrick Mahomes. Where I get into the conversation, though, is when people start saying things that would suggest mediocrity, but that's elevated because of surroundings. It's completely the other way around, and I don't believe that point even exists. You do not get this functioning offense at this level with mediocrity at quarterback. That's a fallacy.
Well, I don't think that you get to where he is as a starter, 17-4 in the regular year, 21-5 overall as a starter. You don't get to that level, and this is no longer small sample size Steve, Mark. We're talking about 26 games, including 5 playoff games, and he's won 21 of the 26, and one of the games that he lost, he only played about a quarter because his arm got ripped off. Now, it's still a loss, and I believe that, but in terms of all the games he's played, he's won 21 of the 26 games that he has started. So this is no longer a small sample. So
right.
Is the truth somewhere between the Cam Newtons and what Tim was saying about many Niner fans want to exalt him as the second coming? I think that that's a little bit overdone and overdramatic, but he's certainly not the 11th best player on their team. The truth lies somewhere in the middle.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Peter King, our conversation is coming up in just about 7 or 8 minutes. He got into a lot of stuff, including the story of Brock Purdy being drafted with the last pick in the draft and what was going on in the 49er war room when all of that went down. Really, really fascinating stuff from Peter. All of that is coming up in just a little bit. Yeah, you're right, and that's the other piece of this conversation that won't go away. And you know, just to let those of you know who are a little tired of it, not going away next week either. It won't, because we're obsessed with this stuff. And I'm not talking about you and me, but in the NFL, we are wooed and wowed by quarterbacks. And that's okay. The league has actually fed that. The league realizes that and understands that that quarterbacks, that's the straw that stirs the drink. That's why they've made the rules the way they've made them. It's why you can't breathe on the quarterback and you can't touch them high or low or too hard or at this angle. You can't throw them to the ground. You can't seemingly do anything other than kind of put your shoulder into their midsection and hope it doesn't hurt. Because if it hurts, they might throw that flag too. The league did that because of our obsession with that guy and that player. So all of them have a scrutiny that is at such a level, and the thirst for talking it out and figuring it out and labeling it is always there. Then add in that this particular one, such a high level of success, off to the Super Bowl now in just his second year, not even a full 2 years, yet looks like this tiny little guy and was the last pick in the draft. That is a story that won't quit. It won't quit. I've mentioned this a bunch of times. What, the show like Guru and Evan were talking about today, where the conversation went to Brock Purdy haters, and then there was a caller who called in and was like, nobody hates Brock Purdy. I'm like, but I get that it feels that way sometimes. Tucked into all of this are a bunch of compliments to Brock. He's good for business. He is just endlessly interesting. That's why they keep talking about him.
Right.
Because he's endlessly interesting.
And a lot of it, I think, is comparable to Steph Curry early on in Steph's career. Now,
I agree.
We think about Steph Curry now, and it's not a fair comp because Steph's one of the greatest players to ever do it. But there was so much shade thrown at Steph for being too light, too small, just a shooter, not good enough, bad ankles, all the rest of it. And then he became a champ, and it was, they had the road kind of cleared for him. They didn't really beat anyone. And then they won 2 more. Well, it was because of Kevin Durant.
Right.
And you still, jump shooting team, you're still not the guy. I know you've won 3, but you needed KD to do it. And then he won the 4th. And when he won the 4th, he was also finals MVP. And he went from being a great shooter to the greatest shooter of all time to now he's being seen as one of the 20 best players in history. Maybe one of the 10 best players in history. Wherever you want to put him in the pantheon, it took a long time in his journey to get there. And just hearing you talk, it made me think about a baseball player named Greg Maddux, who Greg Maddux never blew you away with his stuff. He threw 88 to 91 with movement, and you just didn't hit him. And it kind of reminds me of Brock Purdy. And I'm not saying Brock Purdy's going to have that career. If he does, then the Niners are probably going to win 3 or 4 Lombardis. But it's the same idea of, how can you not hit this guy? Maddux was 6 foot. He wore glasses. He was 188 pounds. He wasn't Randy Johnson. He wasn't, all these big, hard-throwing pitchers and Clemens and Schilling and all the rest of it. He just simply went out there and got the job done. So it will take time for Brock Purdy, and I'm starting to come around to what you said, and I hope we get to find out. If he wins the Super Bowl, I hope we get to find out if there still is shade out there.
Well, I mean, look, there's more than one way to do it. And I think that's what you're getting at right there with Greg Maddux. It's an interesting comp for sure. There's more than one way to do it, and all of them are acceptable, if you will, if successful. And we can go through history and see a bunch of those guys. I mean, just from that physical standpoint, like Drew Brees and Russell Wilson those are Super Bowl champion quarterbacks. You wouldn't ever look at them. They wouldn't walk into a room and you would be like, oh, okay, Mr. Athlete. You wouldn't do that. And so there's a bunch of different ways for this to go. But the word that keeps bouncing around in my head in a number of different Bay Area sports ways right now is trust. And again, it's what I think the Giants have lost with their fan base, and in some cases some of their players that is most problematic. But on the 49ers side, it's actually what makes them go. And our last caller, Tim, just mentioned it. Whether Brock Purdy is good, great, or anywhere in between, the players really believe in him. And I think all observers believe that Kyle Shanahan, in his time as a head coach, has never trusted his quarterback more. And that is the biggest weapon the 49ers could have going into any game, but especially this one.
Yeah, especially when you think about Jimmy Garoppolo and why they lost that Super Bowl. And it wasn't because of Jimmy. It was a number of different factors, but you got to the spot where you didn't trust Jimmy Garoppolo to make the plays that you do trust Brock Purdy to go out there and try to make. And Brock has shown that he can make, quote, all the throws. And I know he was fortunate with the Ayuk fluke off the face mask that he caught, but that's a throw that Kyle was reluctant to try. I know he tried it to Emmanuel Sanders and he overthrew him, kind of like Brock overthrew Ayuk in that play against Detroit. But, you know that he's going to give Brock Purdy much more of a chance to try to make all the throws that he did Jimmy.
888-957-9570. Peter King in moments. Let's go to Tony in the city. Hi, Tony. What are you doing?
Hey, I love how you're starting to bring up, people are starting to bring up comparisons between him and Steph, because I think what's going on, people underestimate him. He's just another babyface assassin.
Huh.
He looks, Google Marty McFly. He's just spitting image of Marty McFly. So I think when he comes out, I think people just continue underestimating him. He comes out, he just throttle you. He's an excellent quarterback, and I think he's going to do really well. And as long as we have luck going our way, we're going to do okay in the game.
Well, luck is a buzzword, though, too, Tony. I totally get what you're saying, but that was a topic of conversation earlier this week with regard to the idea of the 49ers being in this Super Bowl. Are they here because they've been good or because they've been lucky? And you'll find a lot of people in the sports community get a little uncomfortable when you start talking about luck. It's not that it doesn't exist, but it is some sort of a combo of an opportunity meeting preparation. You'll hear a lot of people say that. I don't disagree.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who always bristles at the idea of luck because you make your luck. And to me, the only luck that the Niners had was the fact that the ball hit the Lions defender in the face and bounced straight up. Everything else, the fumble from Jahmyr Gibbs, that was a forced fumble. You had to get in there and jar the ball loose. If nobody touches him, I don't think that he fumbles on his own. So a lot of the luck, to me, we use luck as a way to dismiss the actual effort that it took to make a play.